Minister, thank you for being here this morning to address this issue. I appreciate your time at a very busy time for you, so I'm glad to see you in to answer the question. And what has moved me to ask this question again, and I have raised this issue in this problem consistently since coming into this House, but you'll have seen, I'm sure, or your officials in the department will have certainly been alert to the mobilisation on social media about the concerns of Irish citizens in the north. And what we're seeing playing out is Brexit again exposing not just the negativities that come along with it, but exposing the existing anomalies that need addressed for citizens and citizens' issues for people who are resident in the north. And the reality, Minister, is this. The Good Friday Agreement, as we all know, is an internationally binding agreement between two sovereign states. It confers, as of birthright, Irish citizenship, British citizenship, or both, to everyone born in the north. Now, that assertion has never been codified in British law, and it has never been codified to the extent that is necessary in domestic law in this state either. So you're seeing all of these anomalies come to sharper exposure as a result of Brexit. But it is obvious that people are going to mobilise and be concerned, be offended, be hurt, be worried as a result of our failure to realise legislatively and legally this firm commitment that was made 21 years ago now. And people in a climate of the threats posed by Brexit, where we've already lost our right to vote in European elections, where we've already lost our right to representation at the EU institutions, where we have already lost access to various EU institutions like the Court of Justice and many others. This not only leaves people deeply exposed and worried, but it also creates a tiered level of citizenship. It creates an inequality which goes against the very core and heart of the Good Friday Agreement, because you will have citizens resident across these islands who will have various levels of rights, entitlements and accessibilities to European mechanisms and institutions. So I think it's an important point to make, and I listen intently to what the Minister has to say, because I think it's crunch time now that government address these issues, that the British government, the Immigration Minister in Britain, Caroline Nokes, actually said, she stated quite brazenly and quite in contradiction to the Good Friday Agreement, as a matter of law, everyone born in the north is a British citizen. So not only does that run contrary to the spirit of the Good Friday Agreement, but it runs contrary to the word and letter. And I would ask colleagues, and I'll finish on this last guy here, I would ask colleagues to just take a minute to think about how that feels. Because we don't derive our Irishness from a passport or from the Good Friday Agreement even. We derive our Irishness from being Irish. And while we don't derive that Irishness from the Good Friday Agreement, what it did do was, after decades, centuries of conflict, say to the world, on a legal footing, on a legal basis, moving out of conflict, we had created a path where people's identities, people's allegiances, people's rights would all be respected. And it's clear now that in the already calamitous environment of Brexit, that aspect, those important core aspects of the Good Friday Agreement, aren't being lived up to, aren't being fulfilled. And I don't think we'll hear the end of it, Minister, until it is resolved. Ó Donnghaile, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you to the Senator for raising this issue. And you're right, it has been raised with me directly, indirectly, via social media and otherwise, and I know the Minister as well has also had this issue raised with him. Ensuring the citizenship and identity provisions, both of these provisions of the Good Friday Agreement, are upheld in all relevant areas is vitally important, and it's something that the Government and that I am continuing to engage on intensively. The Government has noted the update to the UK immigration rules, which was announced, as the Senator has outlined, on the 7th of March, in order to give effect to the UK Settled Status Scheme, and the letter from the UK Minister of State for Immigration, Caroline Nokes MP, on the 5th of February. We are fully aware, and the Government is fully aware, of the concerns that have been raised here today, but concerns from many that these statements raise for Irish citizens in Northern Ireland, particularly, again, as the Senator has outlined, given so much of the uncertainty that surrounds Brexit at the moment. It's important to be clear, however, that these statements in no way change the position that the EU citizenship of Irish citizens citizens in Northern Ireland continues in all circumstances. As EU citizens, they continue to enjoy the right to live and to work throughout the EU and the right not to be discriminated against on the grounds of nationality. Cathaoirleach and Senator, it's very important, perhaps if I could return to the words of the Good Friday Agreement. The agreement recognises the birthright of all people of Northern Ireland to identify and to be accepted as Irish or British, or both as they may so choose. And accordingly, it's confirmed in the agreement that their right to hold both British and Irish citizenship is accepted by both governments. Last December, the Taoiseach wrote to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to raise the case of Ms Emma de Souza, the concerns related to the identity and the citizenship provisions in the Good Friday Agreement, and to suggest a review of the issues and the questions which have been raised, again as the Senator has outlined, not just in recent weeks but for some time now. Following this engagement, the Government noted but also welcomed that the Prime Minister acknowledged in her speech in Belfast only recently on the 5th of February that there have been serious concerns raised about how much UK immigration rules treat citizens, or about how UK immigration rules treat citizens exercising their right under the Good Friday Agreement to be Irish. The British Prime Minister affirmed that the birthright to identity and to be accepted as British, Irish or both, and the right to hold both British and Irish citizenship is absolutely central to that agreement. Prime Minister May said that she had asked the Home Secretary and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to review the issues around citizenship urgently to deliver a long-term solution consistent with the letter and spirit of the Good Friday Agreement. These were very welcome commitments, obviously, and acknowledgements by the Prime Minister, and now what we are trying to do in this Government and our colleagues in the North are actively seeking the outcome of the review, which was announced by the Prime Minister back in February. There is clearly a need for the UK Government to provide assurance to everyone in Northern Ireland that the citizenship and the identity, that both of these provisions together of the agreement are being taken fully into account in all policy areas, regardless of the UK approach to exiting the European Union. The Government also fully recognises the importance of access to EU programmes for Irish and therefore EU citizens in Northern Ireland, and we are continuing to work to try and find ways that they can be protected, consistent with the provisions of the Good Friday Agreement. And then, again, this is irrespective of the approach being taken by the UK to exit the European Union, irrespective of whether we have a deal or not, but obviously we would prefer this in a deal scenario. The protocol expressly confirms that Irish citizens in Northern Ireland will continue to enjoy, exercise and have access to rights, opportunities and benefits that come with the EU citizenship, and access to specific programmes to be addressed during the period of transition and, of course, in the overall context of the future relationship. We are also ready for a no-deal exit by the UK, and as I have said, we have been actively exploring ways in which we can protect and ensure that these EU entitlements for citizens in Northern Ireland continue wherever possible. In any scenario, this Government, the Taoiseach and I will continue to engage with the UK Government to ensure that the important citizenship and identity provisions, that both of these provisions of the Good Friday Agreement are upheld in all of the relevant policy areas. Thank you.
Centre supplementary.
Minister, thank you. Minister, I don't want to make your life any more difficult, because I understand and appreciate this is a complex and trying time for the Government. But this is really high-wire stuff, and with the greatest respect, the answer you have given to me, I have really more or less heard for the last 2 years in terms of this process. What we aren't hearing or seeing yet is a resolution to this issue. And I understand and appreciate fully that the main thrust of the responsibility for this rests with the British Government. But inside of our passports, it says that the Minister for Foreign Affairs effectively is responsible for us. So what people need to hear is those words, yes, but they need to see that translated into action from the Irish Government that is ensuring the pressure is coming from this state and indeed from our colleagues in Europe, that says to the British Government they are in breach of the Good Friday Agreement if they do not codify in law what is expressed within that document that confers onto all of us, potentially 1.8 million people. You know, this won't apply to everyone. There's people who are content in their British citizenship and identity in the North, and fair play to them. I fully support and respect that right. But there's that whole increasing number of people in the North who demand, quite rightly and quite understandably, that their Good Friday Agreement rights be asserted and legislated for. You mentioned the Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister's statement on February, or the speech on the 5th of February, where she outlined the review into these issues, and we've heard no more about it since. Actually, what we have heard since was the statement from Caroline Nokes on the 7th that said we're all British as a matter of law. So that, since the 5th of February to the 7th of March, that has been the British Government's approach. So I think we need to ensure we up our game, and that citizens, particularly in the north, particularly those who are most affected by this, are seeing action from the government because of where we are at in this point in time, because it is so precarious, Minister. And I know you appreciate and understand that, but we need to start seeing those words translated into legal, actionable, tangible works. Thanks, Les Cairlick. Thank you, Minister.
And again, I suppose just to take on board your concerns. I understand absolutely those concerns, and I think there are many who are concerned by more recent statements that have been made since the Prime Minister's. But I would again reaffirm the commitment made by the Prime Minister, where she says the birthright to identity and to be accepted as British, Irish or both, and the right to both hold British and Irish citizenship is absolutely central to that agreement. So we absolutely intend to ensure that the Prime Minister upholds that commitment and that statement that was made. Obviously, what we would like to see is the outcome of the review, which was announced and which we had asked for, the Taoiseach specifically. But what we are also doing, whether it's in terms of the overall negotiations or our engagement with our EU and our UK colleagues, is stressing that under any scenario, whether it's a deal or a no-deal scenario, and obviously we're working towards having a deal so that we can work towards a future relationship, that we have that transition period to be able to work out some of the more complex issues, the rights and the accessibility for citizens of Northern Ireland if they so choose and wish to. But under any scenario of the UK's exit from the European Union, the obligations and the commitments, whether it's of the Irish Government or the UK Government under the Good Friday Agreement, must remain. We're absolutely committed to that, and that entails, when we're talking about the rights and entitlements of Irish citizens, both in the context of their identity but also citizenship, both of these must be upheld, and I can assure you that we will do everything in our power to see that that happens.
Minister, does that mean for government, I suppose, ultimately, that legislative codification? Just that one very quick supplement.
I'm not allowed to really. You'll have to have that chat on the side.
What we need to see now is an update from the Prime Minister on the review, and I think following that review we will obviously
I'll come back.
we will take it from there.
Okay, you'll stay in touch on it, no doubt. Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, Senator.